What's up, you beautiful souls? It is your pal, it is me, LC, and I'm here with my good friend and co host, Pamela Topchian, Breakthrough Hypnotherapy, and we are looking so forward to having this conversation with you tonight. I just want to welcome you here, do a slight bit of housekeeping before we get into what's going to be, as always, a beautiful and amazing conversation. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Transgender Mentor on youtube.com, I appreciate you. We both do. If you feel led to or resonate with our content, please consider subscribing to our channel, like our video. Feel free to leave a comment about, either guests you'd like to see us have on, topics you'd like to see us cover, or if you have any questions and you don't mind them being public, then feel free to put those comments there on our YouTube page. If you're there on our Facebook, we also thank you. We love, seeing everyone from every platform all here in this one place. We're just so excited to be doing this. This is season 1 of the Transgender Mentor podcast, and we don't know where it's going to go from here, but just know that you're on the ground floor helping us build something that we both truly believe in. And so as it will go through changes, as all things do, evolving in good ways, we just want to thank you for being here with us right now and helping us grow and evolve. So tonight we're going to talk about what it's like to be sober and transgender, and how we can use our oppositions as moments of awakening. And, Pamela is a beautiful soul in this area, as she is a family member of people with addiction issues. She knows what it's like to be on that side. She's an amazing ally to the LGBTQ plus community, and especially the young trans humans in the world. She is a Trevor Project ally, training to be one of their volunteers right now, and she's a beautiful soul. So I won't keep you from her any longer. We are super excited to be here with you and ready to kick off this Sunday night soul session live with my good friend, my co-host, Pamela Topchian. This is the Transgender Mentor podcast and videocast. All right, let's go. Pamela, welcome. So happy to see you.
Hi.
Your
You are
smile
too
always
kind.
brings No, your smile always just brings me the greatest joy. It
Oh, thank
really
you.
does. I always love popping in with you here. Um, yeah, and sorry about the intro there. I forgot it was a Wednesday night soul session, but that's my favorite intro that I've made thus far. And as I know yours too, and now it just makes me smile.
I love that. I
I
want to do
love it.
some belly dancing in there.
I love it. I think that's the most unique things about getting to know people, are those little bitty things that, you just don't think of and you wouldn't think to ask. To find out last week that Pamela loves belly dancing just made me chuckle and just love her all the more, because I just love that.
I
I
can
love
hardly sit still in my seat when I hear that, even
it.
just the little intro.
I
Uh,
saw
I,
you kind of getting to the boogie. I saw you getting ready to the boogie when it came in. Ryan says, "Nice hair, Pamela."
yeah, that's my friend Ryan. Thank you for joining us, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
I was talking to him before earlier today, and I said I have to get in the shower, and we're doing the podcast tonight. And he said, "Yeah, like they can smell you on the internet." And I said, "Well, it's more about my hair than how I smell." so, so thank you,
No wonder he's
Ryan.
No wonder he's got the laugh emojis there.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Welcome, Ryan. We love you. You're always a great supporter here, and we're always happy to see you, man. And thank you for everyone else that's tuning in right now. Remember, if you want us to see your comments, make sure you give StreamYard your permission, so that we can see them, or else we can't. But I just want to give a
Yeah.
great shout out to everyone who's watching this now and those that'll watch this on the replay, whether it's a day from now or 3 years from now.
Mhm.
We hope that it'll still resonate. So, I've been doing a lot of sober stuff, these days, and especially with Recovery Soul Food being back
Mhm.
in full swing, having some amazing guests there,
Absolutely.
just really getting to dive into that, recovery part and that
Yeah.
sobriety part. And, the common theme that I keep hearing over and over of people that have gotten to the place where they've become like successful, I guess you would say, because I
Mhm.
mean that's a hard word to use. I think there's so many definitions of success, but
Yeah.
just for a general term, but people that have managed to get to a place where they're not looking over their shoulder for relapse, I guess is what I mean,
Mhm.
has always been they have found that button where they've
Mhm.
had their oppositions have become their awakening.
Mhm.
And so, I know
Yeah.
that you have a lot of opposition and awakening stories, but as a family member of someone
Mhm.
in active addiction, was there what opposition do you think that it was that finally got you to the awakening of I can't save another human being, like I
Ugh.
can't save this person?
Well, when you feel like you are, you have more interest than they do, when you've done everything that you possibly can, I mean, that you feel like you possibly can, and you're just so beat down that you're almost at almost at that rock bottom with them just from
Mm,
trying to keep them out of that place,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
So,
it makes perfect sense.
you have to come to a point of, do I save myself? Do I love myself more than, you know, the how important it is to save them? And it's not really necessarily important, but let me see how to word that. Where you don't want to put yourself in danger by trying to keep them out of danger.
Right,
There comes a,
right.
a turning point there where they just keep self-sabotaging, and there's nothing more you can do, and you're feeling bitter about it, maybe, or
That's a good way to put it.
hating yourself. You're just because you can't there's nothing you can do, so you are feeling less and less about yourself, even, so it's really bringing you down, rather
Yeah.
than when you notice that that is bringing you down more than what you are helping to bring them up,
Yeah,
if
I
that
think
makes
that
sense.
that's it's a very valid point because, and also the things that, like, so for me, when I was in my first year of recovery, most people that know my story know that my wife ended up in a full heroin relapse. And I
Yeah.
remember in that time never knowing what it was like to be on the other side of that
Mhm.
addiction.
Mhm.
I remember I began being hard on myself and feeling worse about myself when I was doing everything I knew to do to
Yeah.
try to get her to wake up. And some of those
Right.
things weren't very nice. Some of the
Yeah.
things I said out of
Mhm.
that desperation and that pain,
Yeah.
were harming to her. And I could feel that, but yet I was in
Mhm.
that same space where you feel like you're sinking. And it's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
what can I do here? It's for people who haven't been there with a family member, or spouse that is involved in deep, devastating addiction. It's hard to explain that desperateness that you feel
Mhm.
because you're watching, everything around you and all that you've created as along with yourself being going
Right.
down with this ship. And
Right.
there's this love, that you have for this other human being. And it's also very depressing to realize that that love is not enough. And see, when you're in that mindset, which
Mm.
we know better now, Pamela, but when you're in that space, you believe somehow that your love can pull them out. And it's amazing the internal damage that's happening
Yeah.
as this is not going on, and how it just really sucks the life from you.
Yeah.
And so that's powerful.
It takes more than a loving spouse or family member or even friend. It does take outside help. And
Yeah.
if and there's so many people out there, I'm sure you know way more than I do, that feel like, I don't need to seek professional help, or I've tried professional help, because so many people have
Yeah.
tried so many things and nothing
Yeah.
really seems to help.
Yeah, I
And
was that way
then
too.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
their friends or their family feel like, if I'm there for them, because we hear so much about, supporting, and, love shouldn't be conditional and that kind of thing. And it almost makes you feel guilty,
Yeah,
when you
exactly. It
start to
does.
feel like you want to distance yourself from that
Oh,
person,
yeah.
because it's dangerous to you. Once it
Yeah.
becomes dangerous, not only to your psyche, but, physically dangerous, and, everything that you have and know about yourself is sinking down with them, like you said. Um, you have to make that decision and realize that this is more than what you can handle, and this is more than what should be on your plate. And even if
Mhm.
there is, I know you've talked about on the recovery soul food that there's so many different roads to recovery, and not just one is the right road. And sometimes you
Yeah.
go down one road and you realize, I should have taken this other turn, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so many people try so many different things and they don't work, or they feel like they don't work. But I think that
Mhm.
every time you try,
Yes.
you're getting a little bit, even if it's 3 steps up and then 2 steps back, you're still one
Yes.
step higher than you were before. So
Yes.
it's just a matter of consistency and patience and diligence. But it does not mean that the family member or the friends or whatever have to go down with them. You have to sort of save yourself. You're not going to be able to, you know, you have to put that oxygen mask on yourself first, right? You
Yes,
know?
yes, yes. And that's a beautiful analogy and example because it is so true. I mean, when we talk
Yeah.
about, planes going down, a mother's
Hmm.
first instinct, of
Right.
course, is to mask her child. And it's hard to get, especially in our society, when we are all operating from the way we've been taught about
Hmm.
love and what that means. And basically, I think the disservice and the awakening process that's happening now is that we are understanding that the kind of love we've been taught is very codependent.
Yeah.
It's very surface level. It's not, it's more of the feeling of love and not
Hmm.
necessarily the action of love,
Yeah.
because that's what we learn when we start to to awaken within ourselves, especially as the family member, spouse of someone who's going through an active addiction,
Hmm.
is that love is far more than a feeling. It's an
Hmm.
action, and the action to take care of oneself does not make you selfish. It makes
Hmm.
you the mother that puts the oxygen mask on
Right.
first, because as you're depleted
Hmm.
of everything you are, and I equated it to, you're basically doing everything that at the the person in addiction is doing. You're just not getting the high at the end. You're
Yeah.
not getting the instant gratification of that moment. I've watched family members, you know bleed their savings. I've watched family
Hmm.
members
Yep.
steal and embezzle from their jobs to,
Yep.
because they feel like enabling their child, it's mostly children I've seen,
Hmm.
enabling their child or spouse is their way of helping. It's what, because they don't want to imagine them, going through what they'd have to go through.
I think part of it too is like if you keep them in your household or even in your little circle, if you're giving, you're then not pushing them away. It's like
Mm,
then, they can never say that I wasn't there for them, or
Yeah.
the moment that they start to feel like they want to
I'll be
maybe,
right here.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, then I'm
Oh
here for
yeah.
you. Or if I push you out on the street, then I don't know what's going on and I'm going to imagine all kinds of things rather
Yes.
than, or if I walk out, whether I push you on the street or not, if I walk
Yeah.
away from this, then I don't know what's going on and I'm going to beat
Yeah.
myself up about it. So there's
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah, it was very scary, it's like, I knew because of the things that I had already gone through in a 22-year addiction. I
Yeah.
had taken a good stab at sobriety a few different times. And I say sobriety, not recovery, because recovery
Hmm.
to me is a whole different ball
It
game.
sure
You
is.
know,
Recovery has a lot more to
recovery,
do with a lot of everything else besides the substance.
right.
Yeah.
Right, it absolutely does. I mean, I think to take a step towards recovery, abstinence is not necessarily required. It is a
Right.
step towards, getting there.
Hmm.
In just trying to be clean and sober, we're still operating on that surface level where we say,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm not gonna use this to cope.
Hmm.
And that again is like trying to hold back a dam of water with your hands.
Hmm.
It's not really going to work. And if it does, it doesn't work for an amount of
Right. It's
time.
not long
You don't,
term. Yeah.
right. You don't rebuild anything. It's like you push pause on
Hmm.
everything and you manage to drudge through your life. And that's not
Yeah.
a happy existence. Um, but it was for me, I knew what I needed to do in the situation to protect our son, that I
Hmm.
just had to, you know, I needed to, kind of remove him from having to watch what was
Yeah.
happening. But at the same time, I felt like if I do this, I'm going to put her in a position that's going to probably make things worse. Like I knew that I was going to beat her up, and it's a hard position to be in. Like, let us not make light of the situation and the hard position that it is to
Yeah.
be in. And I think that I see Ryan's comment that says push them out of self-protection and could put them at more risk. And that's exactly true. I mean, that is that line that you
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
whenever you say, because it's true that it could. And when you're trying to reason with someone in active addiction, they cannot hear
Right.
that, I gotta be able to, to regain my life. They
Yeah.
hear, like Ryan says, you're not good for, you're no good. That's what they
Hmm.
hear. You're no
Hmm.
good versus,
Hmm.
I can't help you from here. Like, I cannot help you from
Yes.
this space. And I
Right.
think that we do a disservice when we blanket out telling people to support, but we don't necessarily tell them how,
Right. Right. It's
and I
there's
think
a
that's a
there's a
good
whole
thing what we're
guilt
talking about.
factor there for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Self blame and guilt for sure. Um, yeah. Uh, what was I thinking of? Something that you had said about, you go through it all with them, but you don't get the high afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But you also get the lifelong memories of it and nightmares,
Yeah.
whereas they may have been blacked out
Right.
during the worst of it,
Right.
or they
Right.
might not remember any of it, and then you
Right.
also then get the whole gaslighting of, well, that never happened, or
Oh
what are you
yeah.
talking about,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
For sure.
you have those memories with you forever, and
Yes.
they don't, because
Yeah.
you weren't, your mind wasn't altered. So
That's true. That's
yeah.
true. And as we're talking about, this is the transgender mentor, and we really talk about, addiction being so prevalent in the trans community and the LGBTQ plus community as a whole.
Yes.
A lot of our community, they're starting from a place of already being pushed out. And
Yeah.
this provides a whole different level of fuel to people trying to, and I kind of like what JD Dilk said last night on Recovery Soul Food, filling those voids.
Yeah.
Because, for the longest time, me as a trans person, not accepting myself as trans and
Mhm.
just living in a lesbian lifestyle and in that community, it just seemed like I was one big void that I was
Yeah.
trying to fill,
Mhm.
something just to feel
Yeah.
okay in my own skin,
Yeah, and
you
I
know?
wanted to mention too that this, you have Recovery Soul Food podcast and you have Transgender Mentor podcast, and you've been on others with other people, and you have other projects going on as well. But I want to mention that with this, some people who might be tuning in might be thinking, what does this have to do with, the trans community? But a
Hmm.
huge amount of
Yes.
transgender folks, especially, but also LGBTQ, but especially the transgender, are do have a lot of addiction issues because
Yes.
they want to numb themselves, because they don't
Yes.
feel right in their own skin or the world or their family a lot of times. And
Yes.
it leads to self-harm, it leads to substance abuse very often,
Yeah.
and a lot of people, I think, people in general, but transgender folks, and as well as any in the LGBT community, a lot of times, don't even realize that they're having an issue. It's just the way that they are able to cope with, they're going to
Right.
drink a lot, or they feel like because they have a job, maybe, that they are not, they don't have a problem, but it's still, they're still, you know taking some sort of substance to,
Yeah.
make them feel okay with themselves, or to not think about it, or
Yeah. And let me take a moment to explain, what it feels like when you feel trapped and hopeless in a body that absolutely does not fit how you feel on the inside, and what it's like
yeah.
looking at that. It looks like a hopeless situation,
Mhm.
because immediately what we end up going to is, if I do this for me, what is
Mhm.
it going to mean for my family, my work? We start having to think about basic human needs of, how
Yeah.
will I support myself? I mean, we know that the majority of homeless transgender humans
Mhm.
are there because when they did take that step, they didn't were not able to keep their jobs, or they were
Yeah.
put out of their homes, or on the other hand, they may have just separated themselves from their families to not go through that, and
Mhm.
now they live on the street for those reasons. And
Yeah.
people people that don't understand, they'll say things, they're derogatory things like, well, if these people can afford drugs, they could afford a home, and all these things. People aren't doing drugs because they just love to do drugs. They're
Right.
doing drugs because every human being is hardwired to need to feel comfortable
Yeah.
and happy at times. And for someone who is constantly stuck, like I've always described it, it was like serving time in solitary confinement for a
Mhm.
crime I had never committed.
Yeah.
And when you are stuck like that, and you see a situation that's hopeless, you do want to numb out from that, because
Yeah.
there's no way to explain it to where people fully feel it. There's just no
No,
way.
I always say, that just like, just like giving birth, or just like love, or just like true pain, nobody's going to know. You can't fully describe those feelings or those experiences unless somebody goes through it,
Absolutely.
and it has to be the same thing for, being transgender. um
Absolutely.
and it's not, you don't have to fully be able to understand to be empathetic, and to be,
Right.
to want equality, and unity for everybody, and to want the best for everybody, and to have
Correct.
an open heart. You don't have to understand it all. I want to say too, we were talking, we've gotten a little mixed up with our schedule a little bit, but
Yeah,
um,
we're
we had
working
time.
on getting it
Yeah,
straight.
last time we were going to talk about how, parents can support their trans kids. And especially you said that you've noticed a lot of dads reaching out. Well, it's really very simple in that, anytime that a parent has a child that is interested in something that that parent knows nothing about, what do? You go ahead and you support your child because it's your child and you love them.
Yeah,
Period. End of
yeah,
story.
yep,
It's
yep,
that simple. And
yeah,
what do you do then if you don't know? My child is interested in this. I know nothing about that. What do I do? I go look it up, and it's,
yeah,
this day and age, ignorance is a choice.
yeah.
We all have,
Mm,
if we don't have a phone, we've got the internet somehow, and
that's
most of us
true.
have a phone. I mean,
That's true.
you can look up anything anywhere. You ask somebody, you can find some resources to ask the right people, or, like this podcast, or, there's different websites and resources, but you go ahead and you look for information for your kids so that you can
Yeah,
support them in their interest.
yeah,
It's pretty simple. There's not
yeah.
a whole roadmap of how to support
Right.
your trans kid. We
Yeah.
could
I
give
mean, it's
advice and tips, but that's what it comes
right.
down to.
It's really hard to get a whole show out of that, and here's why. I mean, the reason that that I originally wanted to create Transgender Mentor, and Pamela understood and came on board with me, was because as we look things about transhumans up on the internet, most
Mhm.
of what we are bombarded with are timeline
Mhm.
photos of this is what I look like then, this is what I look like now. we
Right.
are we're bombarded with the medical side, the what it takes to
Yes.
transition, what you have to have. For the
Yeah.
transgender mentor, the reason that we don't talk as much about that stuff is because I myself, as a transhuman, just going into transitioning at 44 years old, I wanted to know, things as well. And that's all I could find. But as
Yeah.
I started in my transition, I realized that there is a big emotional part to transitioning as well that is not being talked about as much. And so I just want to piggyback off of what you said. And I urge people to when they're looking at things like that, whether it be for them,
Mhm.
their kids or themselves, that you realize that while there is a lot of information on the physicality of
Mhm.
everything, there is the emotional side that needs to
Right.
be heard and talked about as well. And that's what we just necessarily do here is
Yeah.
try to talk about that. I talk about it from a place as a trans man living, in the world in the
Mhm.
South. Pamela comes to it as an ally, and wanting to know more, and know the experience and be helpful in that way. So I think that it's vital for you to have all ingredients. Make sure that you are watching the podcast, and the reading the stuff that's about the physical part, but don't forget that there's a huge emotional aspect to it as
Right.
well, and bring some of that in, and then you will have a full spectrum picture
Yeah.
of what it's like. Because just like for the family of someone in active addiction, the family transitions with
Mhm.
someone that is transitioning as well, if that family sticks around.
Right.
And I hope that they do, because being
Yeah.
able to see somebody you love,
Mhm.
like, finally feel comfortable in their own skin,
Yeah.
and feel like just become full of who they are, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. Like, that
Yeah.
there's joy in that I think our see it's I think it's so easy for us to look at the news, and see that agenda based, and we blanket all transgender topics, and situations under this blanket of what we see on the news. But what
Yeah.
we've got to remember is these are real human beings
Right.
with real lives, with hearts, with feelings, with dreams and goals and
Mhm.
aspects. We are not some, anomaly, if you will, that you're
Right.
watching blanketed of a group of people on the news. We're real
Right.
life human beings. And that's what happens when you come down from that place of just being educated by, the world news, and
Yeah.
get to know people.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the difference in acceptance and different things, is coming down and really learning,
Yeah.
really learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's a lot to it. It's
There
not
is.
cut and dry.
I think that a lot of people have the misconception that, transgender is all about the outside, we both have
Yeah.
seen a lot of, I'm thinking of like TikTok things, but also I had somebody say to me not too long ago, well, if they don't go through with all the surgeries, to fully change their gender, then they're not really transgender or they're not committed. And it really struck me that how, you know this is a relatively intelligent person that said this to me too, and I was kind of like surprised by that. I think that people need to know it really doesn't have to do with, what's between their legs or what their body looks like. It has to do
Yes.
with their soul, within you. I mean, if I,
Yes.
you know, we've said several times that, we've explained what cisgendered is, and that's, where you feel fully and completely the gender that you were born with or the sex
Right.
that you were born with. And
Right.
because sex and gender are two different things. And if you don't feel comfortable in that, that's not something that you can explain to anybody
No.
who hasn't felt that.
No, it's
And it's
not.
not about attraction either. It has nothing to do
No.
with attraction.
No.
But
No.
there are some people that can go through, you know, can, maybe dress as, or I should say, present to the world as the gender that they feel most comfortable with, regardless of any surgery. And they
Yeah.
start to feel a little more like themselves, like an
Yeah.
awakening, like we've said, like an
Right.
awakening, like this is who I am. This feels so much better like this, um, compared to, regardless of the surgeries.
Right.
And and for some people, though, they need to have everything line up with how they feel inside on the
Absolutely.
outside to feel whole and true to themselves. And that's what it's
Absolutely.
about. It's within you. It's not what's on the outside, regardless of how you present, the surgeries, the clothes, any of it.
Well, yeah, absolutely, because I came to it with that belief as well, that I would have to change, everything about me would have to
Yeah.
change physically in order for me to feel comfortable. But the more I began to get deeper into the
Mhm.
transition, and the more I began to start seeing my body and my face start
Mhm.
taking shape,
Yeah.
and I was also doing that deeper healing within,
Right.
where I wasn't just focused on my identity as a
Right.
trans man, and that's
Right.
it. And I think that's part of what trips us up a lot, is that
Yeah.
I'll be happy when
Mhm.
aspect of belief, when I was realizing that, you
Yeah.
know, I don't have to go through every single step to now accept myself as who I am. For some people, like my beautiful friend Lee,
Mhm.
the label is enough. Like, the
Yeah.
label is empowering for him, and
Mhm.
he does not feel the need to be on HRT or have surgeries, but this is who he
Right.
is, and he walks in that. And
Mhm.
a lot of people, as you walk in that and you're comfortable in your own skin and your own shoes,
Mhm.
people don't question as much. But
Right. Right.
we also got to talk about the fact that these surgeries are
Mhm.
highly expensive.
Mhm.
And in a lot of places in our country, insurance is still not covering
Right.
these types of surgeries. So
Right.
so for a lot of the trans community, they
It's
may
not even an
still,
option. Yeah.
right, they may still never be able to fully
Right.
get to the place where they feel completely whole. And
Mhm.
again, we got to talk about the emotional distress that that puts on a human being when, they know I'm never going to get here, or they believe I'm never going to fully have it. It's kind of
Right.
like knowing that you're trans but identifying as a lesbian because that's as
Yeah.
close as you can get,
Mhm.
or what you believe is as close as you can get,
Right.
because you're so concerned with with maintaining the love from the outside, from
Yeah.
your family, from what's this going to do to them, or how's this going to
Right.
affect. So, for a lot of people, as far as not being committed, I think that it is more of a commitment for a human being that does not
Yeah.
go go for hormones or surgery. I think that's more commitment to say I am trans and
Right.
never change
Right.
anything physical, because that is, that takes a lot more.
Right.
It just
Right.
takes a lot
It's
more. So,
yeah. Yeah.
but it's a great
Yeah.
example of the mindset that's in the world.
That's what I was getting at, that
That's a
you
great example. It's a
yeah.
great example because that's how people think, that they
Right.
don't, and they think they know. When they
Mhm.
think like that, they think that, well, this is what I believe and that's that.
Right. And we've talked about this before to where people get to a point, especially when you're an adult, you get to a point where this is what I believe about this subject, whatever it is, and a
Mhm.
lot of political stuff is about this too, I think, is we get to a place of this is how I think about this. This is where I stand on this. And you and if you start questioning or seeing things that make you want to explore something differently than what you've always thought about a subject, then it's uncomfortable and you have to
Yep.
either decide to go in that uncomfortable space and explore, you know,
Yep.
or stay where you were. It's easier to stay where you were and just stand
Yep.
your ground and say this is what how I've always thought about it,
Yep.
regardless of any new information or
Yep.
or any growth within yourself even. And you can also, think about people who have families and friends and they're in a group of people that think this way or believe this way. Well, if you start to think differently, what happens then? Are these people
Yeah.
no longer my friends? Where do I belong? Where do I fit in? It's the same kind of thing too
Yeah.
with, I've heard, of course you just mentioned it, but other people have too about, transgender people are in, before they sort of realize that it's a gender thing. They may identify with a gay or lesbian more community,
Right.
but still not really feel that that's where they belong and know that that's not really them, but that's kind of where
Yeah.
they have fit for a long time. So when you start to maybe make those transitions, then you feel like, well, is this community still going to accept me? These are my friends.
Right.
These are the people that I've stood up with in,
Right.
maybe in pride meetings and
Right.
events and whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and we've talked before too about how transgender a lot of times is a little bit pushed away sometimes or
Yep.
on the outside of the fence a little bit from the LGBTQ community, even though the T is transgender, but
Right.
they're sometimes pushed aside, like it's
Yeah.
still because it's not
Like,
exactly,
right.
doesn't really fit
Right.
right in there. So
Right.
it's harder for people to fully, for so many reasons, but there's
Yeah.
that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there was something that you were first started with that, and I was thinking, about where, people stand in what they believe, and you were
Hmm.
saying, to learn something new or to explore something, we got to accept that being uncomfortable, and yet we
Hmm.
are subconsciously taught as a society through everything that we watch and see and
Hmm.
products, to that we're not supposed to go for the uncomfortable. So it's very
Yeah.
hard to think that, oh, I'm in the right lane if I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable. We more look at, oh, this is the easy way, so I must be right. Like, this
Yes.
must be right, and what's right for me because it feels easy
Yeah.
and it, moves along.
The
And
path of
I
least resistance.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, we even get it wrong sometimes in the spiritual community because we don't really address that topic enough. Every product that is sold to us is sold to make our lives easier, to do
Right.
things efficient and
Mhm.
quicker and and so to say then to someone getting uncomfortable
Mhm.
lets you know that you are on the right path
Yeah,
and
right.
it's necessary, it really goes against everything that we
Right.
are basically blanketed with. But it
Right.
is so true. We don't
It is.
grow in times of ease. We
Right.
grow in the moments of opposition. And that's why, when we're talking about awakening through
Mhm.
opposition, those are the moments, that we
Mhm.
awaken. We don't become tired of, we don't start changing our energy with money until we just become so broke. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we were
Right. Yeah.
talking about, till we become so broke that it's so uncomfortable and we're like, this has to change. And
Yeah.
that's really the same as far as, like, for me, stepping into gender transition at such a late age in my life,
Mhm.
but to learn that it was more of an average age for people to
Mhm.
come out, because once they get to that level of, growth and different things, then
Mhm.
they're able to kind of stand on their own 2 feet and say,
Yeah.
I gotta live for me.
Right. I
That
think
was a
that's
very
a
uncomfortable thing.
I think that's a midlife thing in general. There's the
Could
whole
be, yeah.
idea of the midlife crisis. Well, it's not necessarily a crisis, it's a time of awakening, it's a time of self-reflection. You get to that midlife and you're like, where am I with my life? What am I
Right.
doing? What changes need
Yeah.
to be made? For a lot of people that
Yes.
doesn't happen, but but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that
for sure.
people get to that point, in their, 40s or 50s, around there. I think that happens.
Yeah, for
But
sure. I mean, and
mhm.
and and I found myself being in the position of, I had a unique situation where I was already in the public eye talking about recovery and healing.
Mhm.
And because I was so adamant not to be a hypocrite in my life,
Mhm.
this was something that I had to do.
Right.
I'd gotten all that healing out, and this was that last thing, and I just
Mhm.
couldn't be a hypocrite and
Right.
continue in that unhappy place.
Yeah.
And also, though, I felt like I had fulfilled my, unspoken duties, if you will. I was in a position where my son was now graduated from high school. um and I was in a place where I no longer had to fear for what he was, going to go through, or questions he
Mhm.
had to answer, which I realize now was a really big mistake, because in
Mhm.
not being confident in who I was and
Right.
standing up for who I was, I didn't teach him how to do that
Right.
either.
Right.
So I made who I was this, like, secret. I was
Mhm.
always very careful because of the bullying and stuff I had experienced. I didn't want
Right.
him to experience that.
Right.
So I did my best to try to make that different. And
Mhm.
so in return, I didn't. And
Yeah.
so as now I see in my son's adult life the results of that.
Mhm.
But I had fulfilled, if you will, those
Right.
duties, and he was now out of high school, and he was now getting ready to go off on his, way, and it was me and my wife. And so
Mhm.
I felt like I could do this, and it was time. And as things worked out, it was time, and
Yeah.
it did work out for me. And I think
Yeah.
that when a person is at their place, then things will present themselves, and the steps will become clearer.
Mhm.
But I don't push people to jump out into doing something that they're not truly and fully
Right.
ready to do.
Right.
um I mean, even if, I guess it's a little bit different when they are basically harming themselves through
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
And like if they're harming themselves through substance use, and abuse, then that's something that, then we've got to talk about and look at. But if they're just in a place where, they say, I know this about myself, but, you
Mhm.
know, I'm iffy or whatever, I don't think
Yeah.
pushing them out into it is probably the right thing. I think some more
Right.
internal work needs to be done,
Right.
because if you're
Yeah.
depending upon that to make you happy,
Yeah.
that's when you're going to get into that situation like our good friend Walt Hayer and many others
Mhm.
that regret transition,
Yeah.
you know, because
Yeah, it's
they
it's not the
believed it would
cure
make them
all
happy. No,
to
it's
feeling
not.
whole.
No.
Absolutely not. Yeah. I understand that. It's
Yeah.
not the cure
Yeah,
all to
for
feeling
sure.
whole. And being we were talking about going through things and having that sort of awakening is, when you go through so much and you come out on the other side of that, once you get to a place of knowing that that's what made you who you are today, that you
Mm,
wouldn't be you wouldn't be who you were today or in the place that you are today without having been through a lot of that. There is
yes.
an analogy of a hothouse flower, which, a flower that
Mm,
is, grown inside of a hothouse, once you get it out in the real world, it can't survive because it's never known,
mm.
even the wind,
Oh,
But
wow.
it's just an
Wow.
analogy and it may not
I
even
love
be
that.
true, but yeah.
No, but I love that. I mean, I
Yeah.
love that. That's a
But
beautiful analogy.
yeah, but I had a family member say to me today that we were talking about my story and stuff I've been through, and I'm the youngest in my whole family, and so they're all older than me. And she had said, I feel bad. There's so much we didn't know, and I said, but I'm glad that I went through it all. I wouldn't be who I am today without having been through all of that. So,
Mm,
it's okay. I feel like I'm a better person for it. And, going through all of this stuff and these hard times within ourselves and getting in that stuck place, and goes towards, people, family members that you're trying to save or trying to help from getting that far down. They need to get there. They need to get there so that they are the ones that are empowered by bringing
yes.
themselves out of it,
Yeah.
because they're not going to be
Yeah.
empowered by somebody else doing it all for them, and they're going to
Yes.
go right back because it's what they know and what's comfortable for them. And
Yes.
you have to come to that place on your own for sure.
Yeah, you truly do. You truly have to come. It doesn't stick until
Right.
you yourself are in that moment of,
Yeah.
I have no other choice but to make a change here.
Yeah.
Not and it seems like the profound part about being in that position is you're not thinking about others outside of you, basically. You're not
Yeah.
thinking about, I've got to make this change for this person
Mhm.
or that person. You're saying, I've got to, like
Right.
whether I make a negative change or this positive change,
Right.
I got to give, like
To
you're
a point
breaking
that this
apart.
is it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the breaking
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
way are you gonna go on it?
And it's a
Yeah.
powerful place to be. I mean,
Mhm.
like it is a powerful
Yes.
place to be. And I feel exactly the same way you do. And I didn't for so long. And I think that's a
Mhm.
powerful and amazing sign of how much healing that we've done and that a person
Absolutely.
does when they can say, I was brought here. I
Yeah.
often used to say in my early speaking career that, I did my best to try to, forget my past. That now
Mhm.
that past is the platform that I stand
Yeah.
on to reach my
Mhm.
goals and my dreams, because it's so true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it does take some intentioned
Mhm.
work and healing and education and inspiration to get to that place, because
Yeah.
we often looked at those things and say, why me? Even
Yeah.
about being trans, I asked for so
Mhm.
long, because of the contradiction of religion that I was taught from where I'm from in the deep south,
Mhm.
and and things that never made sense to me, if God doesn't make mistakes,
Yeah.
and yet I know that I'm made this way. How do I reason that in my mind? And so the
Yeah.
mind can't, so it just says, okay, I don't. And
Yeah.
then I'm gonna try to numb that part. Um,
Yeah.
that that is a big thing in a lot of lives, in a lot of people's lives, especially trans people's lives. But it's that same thing whenever you get to this this place in your trans journey where
Mhm.
you can be grateful for who you are.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely where I am in this world. Like, I'm so grateful to be a trans man in this world,
Mhm.
because it has taught me so much about other people. It's taught
Yeah.
me so much about both the feminine and masculine
Mhm.
aspect in all of us, and
Yeah.
how safe and powerful it is to open yourself to each and both
Yeah.
of those aspects of yourself. You know, that makes you become a whole person.
Yeah.
And I'm really not sorry or angry about any of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore.
I
Anymore.
was
And I'm
talking
so
about
grateful
that
for
with
that.
somebody recently too, about have transgender people and non-binary people really are more together than the cis people, because they do have more in touch with the feminine and the male side,
Oh
more
yeah.
so than I ever could, or and
Yeah,
most cis
it's
people could.
amazing. It's
We've
amazing.
you've mentioned before too how this is the beginning of, there's a theory, and I agree with you that it's the beginning of letting go of the labels, letting go of I guess, the gender labels, and there's going to be more and more non-binary, gender fluid, transgender folks that are more accepted. I don't want to say there's more, because people have the misconception that this is a new thing, or it's a
Right.
phase, and
Right.
and it's not. It's been around forever. As long as there's been people, there's been,
Yeah.
gender fluid people and
Oh
transgender
yeah.
people. um, but we're leaning more towards people being more comfortable with that, and I don't know that we'll see it in our lifetime, but I do think it's getting there, and I hope
Yeah.
that we are going to be part of this, showing that to people you
Yeah,
know
I hope so too. That's definitely the mission, that,
yeah.
and the passion that drives the platforms that we
Hmm.
are doing, and the things that inspire us to continue to go at it. Because,
Yeah.
you're always going to run up against someone that's still in that older
Yeah.
mindset. I mean, it is just the nature of evolving, and the
Right.
nature of moving to a next level
Right.
of consciousness, and we've done it in every
Right.
generation. I mean, when
Mhm.
we think about the 60s,
Mhm.
the reason that we are so open and more exploratory, if you will, about, sex and sexual behavior, is because of the 60s and the
Mhm.
70s. So in each generation and decade, there
Yeah.
has been more evolution in every bit of it. To me, when I look over it, it is an evolution towards acceptance of what is natural, acceptance of human beings, more towards a consciousness of love versus hate. But it's
Yeah.
always those, it reminds me of, reading you that automatic writing. It's
Mhm.
always those that are buried deep in the tradition, that believe that the old way is the best way. But
Yeah.
if that were the case, there would not be generations of people fighting to move us to the
Mhm.
next level.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if we do continue to operate from those vibrations of that fear and oppression, and holding on to it because it's what our fathers and grandfathers and
Mhm.
ancestors did, then we are blocking and
Yeah.
stopping our
Growth.
own growth.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We look at all of these catastrophes and these severe disasters, and diseases and viruses and storms and catastrophic happenings, and we keep, like, blindly wondering why. But it's the
Yeah.
energy that we are all collectively, or that the majority of collective people are putting out, that brings that back. We're we're taught that, it's a vengeful, God is mad, but it's not that kind of case. It's that, what we vibrate comes back to us. And
Yeah.
as we continuously vibrate in fear and keeping people down and closed because it somehow makes us uncomfortable to grow, and we think at
Mhm.
the same time, oh, uncomfortable means this isn't right, that
Yeah.
can't be right,
Yeah.
then we continuously operate as a collective from a very closed energy, and we
Yeah.
just keep, I this came about because, we just went through a 2-day ice storm. Now in the
Mhm.
south, that's a big deal. In the south, if we get ice on the road, it is catastrophic. And our governor declared a state of emergency, already before this thing happened, because he
Yeah.
understood and knew.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, these things are getting more frequent and this is happening more. And yet we're running around here just continuing to buy what we're being sold and wondering why this is happening. And you feel that closed offness. And as, a person, like, as a trans person, I do have an inside track of openness and acceptedness. When you do
Mhm.
that for yourself, you can see that in other people. You're more
Yeah.
able to accept all of another human being when you can
Right.
accept all of yourself. And it's a big
Right.
deal. It's a big deal
Yeah.
for consciousness as a whole.
Yeah.
As a whole. So, Pamela, I knew it was going to turn out to be an amazing conversation. I'm so grateful for Ryan here. Ryan's always active in the chat, and I love
Ryan
him. I
Ryan's
love
a
it.
chatty guy. I wanna
Ryan
see
is a hoot. I love
I
Ryan.
want I wanna see what he wrote earlier, see if there's anything we need to address because I know he was really talking he was talking a little commenty, but he was also having some thoughts there. I don't know if there's anything we need to
I
address
think
before we
Ryan
go.
probably has a beautiful knack to be comic while addressing
Yeah.
serious issues.
Yep. Sure does. Okay, genetic female. See the ZHE, he's saying, acts as female, yet wishes
Yes.
to identify as non-binary. So
Yeah,
the act as female is coming from your mind, Ryan.
but I do
Correct?
understand one point that Ryan makes in his
Mhm.
next comment,
Okay.
that a person really doesn't have any, and that was one of the things had to accept.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I think trips a lot of trans people up when going through transition, and people find that to be, it's a harmful situation for trans humans, and this is why. Because you think that once the hormones take place or you have surgeries, that you
Mhm.
will just slip right into
Right,
this
right,
cis male culture or cis female culture, and
right,
that's not exactly the case. And we talked about
right,
that with our good friend at Goose Caboose,
right.
our
Corey.
amazing Corey
Corey
there.
Schiller. Yeah, he's an
Yeah,
amazing advocate as
he
well as,
is
he's an
teacher.
educator now. Yeah,
Yes,
he's done it
beautiful.
because he
Yeah,
presents very
very
very male,
masculine.
like nobody people always say, "I would have never known, are you sure?" And he's always coming across people
Yeah,
saying that they don't believe him.
right,
Yeah.
right. And he had made a beautiful point, and that's something we have to accept, is that just like anyone, we're not ever going to know what
Right.
it's truly like to be born in
Mhm.
cis male culture or born in
Mhm.
cis female culture, and or what it's like to be that other gender. That's
Yeah.
why I always, I my pronouns are he and him, but I
Mhm.
always identify as a trans man,
Yeah.
because I like living in that space.
Yeah.
That's what I know,
Mhm.
and if I try to, I think I will be disappointed if I try to live in a cis male only
Mhm.
mindset, because there are just things that I can't fully identify with.
Right.
And to me, that would mean I was being a bit dishonest with myself,
Yeah.
or keeping myself from something. So,
Yeah.
I do understand that comment, and I
Mhm.
completely do. And I think that what we're what the hard part for people to understand the gender fluid and non-binary um, aspect is we're people of a certain age, and for all
Yeah.
of our lives we've
Mhm.
known these two genders,
Right,
and it's
right.
going to be hard for a lot of us. I'm
Yeah.
working at it myself to
Mhm.
now understand, but it's more about gender doesn't define
Right,
who someone is, and
right,
what they should like and what they shouldn't like. And
right,
those are the boxes that keep people miserable. Well,
right.
you're a girl. I watched a little video on YouTube right before, and it was from a 3-year old. It was like a Chinese America's Got Talent kind of a thing. China's Got
Okay.
Talent, I guess it's called. And he's a 3-year old kid, and he's a little dancer,
Mm.
and he's very cute, he's very smart, he's very bright. But one of the three judges, there were two males, one of them's Jet Li, the actor, and there's a female in the middle, older woman, a grandmother type, and then there's another man. And the man makes a distinct question to this 3-year old. He says, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And the kid is dressed in overalls and a green shirt, but this was a question: Are you a boy or a girl? And the kid says, "I'm a boy." And while this kid's doing his funny little dance thing, they're showing commentary from the judges, and one of the judges says, "That's such a manly song, and yet his moves are so female like."
Mm.
And I thought, that is an astounding glimpse into different
The
culture,
gender fluid
especially
too. Yeah.
exactly that people find it hard to see people just be who they are,
Beyond
you
that,
know?
yeah. Yeah.
And how ingrained all of
Yes.
that those gender labels are
Yes.
in us. I think that's what makes it so hard, but we get
Yes.
there, and we are getting there. And
And I heard a non-binary person say, and they present as there's somebody that might be hard to tell. Somebody might
mm,
ask them, "Are you male or female?" So they they use all pronouns, and what they said was because, like you, they did not make any transition until they were older, already had children, already involved in the school system and everything
mm,
else. And they said, I am a mother. And in those instances, when I go to the school, I don't mind at all them calling me she. I am also, this and this and this. It's like I wear many hats. And if the
mm,
hat is, more predominantly female or more predominantly male, if I am called he in that instance or she in that instance, it doesn't matter, even though I
mm,
identify as they, them, because
mhm,
that's how I see myself. They're non-binary, but in certain circumstances and situations where they are more predominantly that sort of female figure or
mhm.
that male figure, that's fine by
Yeah,
them to be considered, a man or a woman. So
I
I
think
think
that's a
that,
great testament to
yeah,
someone's comfort within themselves. I think
yeah.
it's just a beautiful testament, and I think we will get it.
So
Like you said, it just will take active empathy, and it will take actively getting to know ourselves, and learning
yeah,
that how someone else presents really doesn't have an effect on us.
right. It's none of our
Like,
business.
it's right, it's really not. And we can find it interesting and fascinating, and all different things, and we don't have to hurt people, like that's the thing. I just wish people would understand we don't have to hurt people because they don't
'Cause we don't
present in a way
understand.
that makes
Yeah.
us understand, and everything. And so I love doing this show, and I love everybody that tunes in. Ryan, you're always a blast to basically have on. Ryan's almost our third our third little guest host over there.
We could have
Um,
Ryan on, but I'd be afraid.
it would make for a comical show, I do
Yes.
believe. So Ryan, thank you as always. We do appreciate you and love you for being here and being so supportive and talking with us. And um, so everybody, thank you so much for what we're doing and helping us grow. And if you're again on the YouTube channel, and you resonate with our our content and what we do here, would like to see something, would like us to address a topic, then subscribe to our channel and leave us a comment. In the description box is also our email address if you want to remain, anonymous, or you want to do it in a private way, or you got some suggestions for us, feel free
Yeah.
to send us an email. And
Yeah.
also, if you are interested in seeing how you can go deeper into your own healing, then be sure to get in touch with Pamela at www.hypnobreakthrough.com. Make sure that you tell her that the Transgender Mentor or Recovery Soul Food sent you there, and you will get a free full session. So that's your first consultation session with a 15-minute session, and then a full free session after that. So you can actually kind of get a handle on how it's going to work and if it could be beneficial for you. That's an
Thank
amazing
you.
gift, and I'm so appreciative of you for doing that for our amazing audience. You all are truly amazing, and whoever you are, however you present, know that you are loved here. This is a safe space. I will
Yes.
continue to be on the block button now that I've learned how to do it.
Yay.
So please feel safe here. Know that you're loved and that we believe in you. And until next time, we will keep you posted on what that next time is going to be. We're going to make a decision right now as soon as this show's over.
Yeah.
And we're going to look into bringing some new stuff and different things for our season 2.
Mhm.
So just bear with us. This is a brand new platform. We're working on it. All right. We love y'all so much. Y'all have an amazing week. See you later.